We have not been on. Okay. All right, so sorry about people that are joining us. We've been talking about the seven seals, and so we haven't been on. The audio was off. Sorry about that. Okay. Glad somebody was watching. Let us know. Sorry about that. Okay, but we've been talking about the seal judgments, and we just discussed the first two seals. The first seal was when it was opened, a rider on a white horse came out, and we discussed a representation of the Antichrist. And then the second rider on a red horse represents war and espionage and division. And we were talking about how in the King James it says that he was given a great sword. And we were talking about how that can be translated, or the Greek translation would be short sword, and that's basically used for political assassinations and close quarters fighting. The NIV translated it as large sword, but that's not entirely accurate. It's more accurate to say great, because it's just talking about a specific type of sword used for causing division. But this rider causes divisions and causes people to kill each other with the sword. He's really behind the scenes spiritual happening that is causing nations to war and people to kill each other. It says nations will rise against nation. That's part of this. I believe just this rider that he's going around causing these divisions. He's poking people, with his great sword to really move against each other, and it's something just. I believe that this rider causes division even among. It's possible that he even causes division among the Antichrist kingdom, and will contribute to various political assassinations and other chaos that will be going on. But the enemy's kingdom will not be this perfect totalitarian rule with absolute control. I was talking about how some pastors talk about how Satan will have total control of the world, but I don't believe that. I believe that that'll be his aim, but he will want to establish a one world government, but he won't be able to. How can I just want to know, how could the enemy really have totalitarian control when there's rebellion, in his heart? When, the enemy's full of rebellious, prideful, arrogance, stubbornness, and idolatrous, and these will be the people that will make up his government. So how is there going to be any type of, totalitarian control? There's going to be a lot of infighting and rebellion. And people that want to serve themselves. I think it'll, in many ways, the Antichrist kingdom will operate like hell does. Hell, it's a very evil place, and, the demons, they only dominate each other. They don't serve each other out of, respect or love for each other, because they don't respect or love one another. They hate, and they're just full of evil, and the demons, they basically just try to dominate one another, and the weaker ones, are subservient to the stronger ones. And that's, I believe, what is going to be like on earth during the Antichrist reign. Because there's going to be intense evil in this kingdom, and how can it not be full of corruption and disorder? He's going to try and say that he's coming against corruption and disorder, I'm sure, but he's just going to create more of it, I'm sure. But next is the third seal. So when the Lamb, this is in verse 5, chapter 6, verse 5. When the Lamb, Revelation, sorry. When the Lamb opened this third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come." I looked, and there before me was a black horse. Its rider was holding a pair of scales in his hand. Then I heard what sounded like a voice among the four living creatures saying, 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wages, 6 pounds of barley for a day's wages, and do not damage the oil and the wine. So this rider brings hunger, famine, and destruction to the global economy, causes massive inflation. If you paid attention to the past few years, you could see how it didn't take very long for the shelves to run dry of eggs and meat, just it's gone quickly. And, it's funny though, nobody really touched the imitation meat, the the plant-based meats, everyone kind of left that there. But if you look at the pictures of the meat counters being empty, you see all the stacks of, the plant-based meat. But, but imagine what it will be if there's more than one virus going on. And that kind of leads to the next verse. This is in verse 7 and 8. It says, "And when he had opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth beast say, 'Come and see.' And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with the sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth." It says kill with death. Like, what does that mean? The Greek word is thanatos, I believe. I don't speak Greek, so I'm not entirely sure. But the word is pestilence. It translates to pestilence. That makes more sense, right? To kill with pestilence instead of kill with death. Doesn't death already kill you? So I think it makes more sense to say pestilence. But so this fourth rider, death and hell, and he's coming with pestilence. He's coming with beasts of the earth to kill too. That's going to be interesting. People being mauled by animals and wild animals and stuff. You could think about starving dogs and even cats, I guess, that would be roaming around trying to find food, and people are food. So, but who knows? But among the killing, starvation, and beasts attacking people, we'll see pestilence. So imagine the coming pestilences that will visit the earth during the tribulation. And who knows how many viruses and diseases will come. If we saw the collapse of, our civilization almost through one virus, imagine 100 or 20, or even just, it doesn't take much, but a fourth of the earth is going to be killed during this time. So it's not going to be a good time, and I don't believe that God has appointed us to wrath. I don't believe that we're going to be going through this. If you believe that, it's your prerogative, but I just don't see in Scripture where God punishes His people in this way. When His people are obedient, I understand when His people are disobedient, but it's just even in this degree of measure, though I don't see God's judgment falling on His people. But if you look at how many diseases and viruses might shut down production of different food and everything, how that's going to cause famine. We saw how, they wanted to take away the meat cutters and take away the meat processing plants and everything. And, they want to do everything to try and slow down the spread. 2 weeks and it'll all be over. 2 years later, it finally ended. But it was just ridiculous. So, just the response. But you look at when people are actually just killing over and dying, in those plants and stuff, and just production being shut down, that's going to cause massive famine across the globe. Because, I think even in Jesus' time, I think everyone kind of had their own farm. Everyone kind of grew their own food to some extent. I'm sure the community, you banded together and you buy stuff that other people had, he has some eggs, I don't have eggs, I'll trade him some turnips I grew or whatever, but it's something just that there was a trade, but everyone kind of grew some level of their own food, but there isn't like that in our modern world, you know, everything's grown in some factory somewhere and then it's brought to us, some factory farm and then, packaged on a factory and then sent to us, you know, and imagine all those supply lines getting shut off. You know, imagine just how quickly the store shelves are gonna empty and how that's gonna cause massive starvation on the earth. I think some people that have their own supplies, you know, may make it, but a fourth of the world is going to perish, and that's a lot of people. Well, depending on how many get saved before the rapture, but could be a lot of people. But if we look just, at even the diseases caused by malnourishment, scurvy and thyroid problems, other diseases, that people get when they don't have enough of something. But famines, diseases, pestilence, wars breaking out. Who knows if any of these viruses might be man-made, released by some lab for chemical warfare, because a nation will be rising against nation. There will be wars going on. We have to wonder, will nuclear weapons be used during this time? That would cause massive pollution across the world. Even if a nuclear weapon isn't used, maybe a dirty bomb. Either one would cause massive problems and just massive pollution. It would cause death to crops, animals, and supply line disruptions. Think about the inflation going on during this time. People aren't, like it says, 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wages and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wages. It's really saying that, food is going to be astronomically priced and people aren't going to be able to afford it. And there's going to be a global economic collapse. And a lot of people are going to die if they can't eat. This will also lead to civil unrest, massive protests, riots, and looting. And if people are motivated by greed, and they kill other people, imagine the cruelty that can come from starving people, and especially if there's no Christians around. But also it says power was given over a quarter or 1/4 of the earth to be killed. 1/4 of the planet's population, that's going to be really bad, and then that's going to cause even more starvation, again, more supply line issues, more economic issues, and it's not going to be a good time for anybody. The tribulation isn't a cakewalk, and I don't believe God will subject his people to these judgments.
I don't think we'll be here.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I believe these judgments are reserved for the unrepentant, stubborn people who shake their fists at God. And even when all these judgments are being poured out, they will continue to shake their fists at God. So instead of repenting and crying out to him for forgiveness, they're going to dig in their heels and continue to hate God.
It's, Jesus was on the cross, and he has 2 people on each side, and one guy's just he's adamant that he doesn't want anything to do with Jesus, and the other guy's saying, "Don't you know who he is?" And you still, and I think that's just an example of what the world is like. That people will always reject.
Yeah. Well, what's also interesting is through other scriptures, we know that both thieves were ridiculing Jesus. And at one point, one of the thieves recognized it was wrong, and he recognized the innocence of Jesus. And he said, we're getting what we deserve. Jesus didn't deserve this. And he says, remember me in paradise. And Jesus said, I will see you in paradise today. Because he had a change of heart right on the cross. And there's going to be people like that, in this time too, that are going to have a change of heart that will turn to Jesus. I believe there will be a massive revival during the tribulation too, of people that will recognize Jesus and say, he's innocent, he's the Son of God, and he is God, and they're going to turn to him. But there's going to be many people that don't. There's going to be many people that continue to shake their fist at God, and they're going to receive the judgment of God. What are some other thoughts you might have on the four horsemen, or different things you've thought about maybe?
In the fourth verse, it talks about a great sword,
Hmm.
and then in the eighth verse, it talks about a sword again.
Hmm.
So what's the difference there?
Yeah. Yeah, so let's take a look at those. So in verse 5, it talks about,
Verse 4.
yeah, so if we're looking
Verse
at,
4 and verse 8.
yeah, verse 4 and verse 8, okay. So if we look at verse 4, it says, let's see, I have it written
You're talking
down.
about the great sword?
Yeah. It says, and there went out another horse that was red, and power was given him to that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given him a great sword. And then in verse 8 it says, and I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed after him. And power was given unto them over the earth, over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword and with hunger. So I believe to kill with sword, really is talking about war, and war can be a lot of different things, but it could even be civil unrest, because bandits used to carry swords, and Jesus even told his disciples, that for them to carry a sword, just because they needed it for protection, because there was roving bandits that might attack them, and Jesus had an important message, and it is okay to defend yourself, against an attacker. That is biblical. It's not something that we should just rely on God. We can rely on God, but He does give us permission to defend ourselves, and we can defend ourselves against an attacker and then pray for the attacker. So, but yeah, it's still something that we do see was to kill with sword and with hunger. So even the sword could be motivated by hunger. Many different nations could be going to war over hunger. So it's or even just people going to war against each other over hunger. What's interesting too is it says the beasts of the earth also, as in it does in with the third rider too, because the third rider, it says, come and see, and there was another, or let's see, I'm trying to, let's see, where do I have it here? Because if you read in verse, let's see, where does it start to talk about the third rider? Third seal, yeah.
No,
That's in verse 5.
9.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it says, come, I looked, and there before me was a black horse, and he was holding a pair of scales in his hand. The pair of scales is, if you think about back then how people would deal, pay for wheat and other things like that, you would have to have scales to measure out the wheat and pay for it. So, he's coming with these scales, and you could look at it as a symbol of commerce, and he's going to basically destroy the world's economy. And you could say that the other three do a pretty good job of that too, or the other two before him do a pretty good job of that. But he will make sure that the world's economy is destroyed, and it's going to cause massive chaos. But also, when he comes with those, says, "Do not damage the oil or the wine," but Yeah, it's something though that with the fourth rider, that it does say that he's gonna kill with beasts too, you know, beasts attacking people. So that's gonna be horrible too.
Sounds like there's gonna be a lot of anarchy going on, and,
Yeah,
I mean, you would think the functions of government will probably be done with.
yeah,
I mean, it's not like, you know, say a police officer is gonna rely on his relief to come in and it's like, forget that. I mean, what's gonna happen with the prisons?
yeah,
I mean, same thing, people that are working in the prisons, ain't nobody gonna be coming to relieve them, they're just gonna say, you know what, I gotta take care of my family, see ya. Drop off their keys or open the doors and. fend
or
for
maybe kill all
themselves.
the prisoners, who knows? I mean, it could be,
Who knows what can happen?
yeah,
Who knows what can happen? I
Yeah.
mean, after we're all gone, I mean, it's like, there's no restraints.
yeah.
It's gonna be dog eat dog and, whoever the strongest is. you know.
Yeah, I mean, because, you know, I kind of feel like God is taking us out of the way. You know, he's gonna remove us from what's coming, you know, and just like it says when, you know, when it talks, the parable that talks about the sower that, you know, he planted a field and then an enemy came by and he threw weeds among it. And the owner said, you know, don't pull up the weeds yet, you know, because as they're growing, they'll be hard to tell the difference. So once they're fully grown, though, you'll know the difference, and you'll throw the wheat into my barn, and the chaff, the weeds, you'll throw them into the fire. And I believe that's what God is doing. He's going to take us up into his storehouse, you know, the wheat, and then he's going to let the weeds burn. You know, that's just, that's how I see it. I mean, you know, if somebody has a different interpretation, you know, I'm willing to listen to them too, you know, but I just, to me, this makes the most sense. You know, the tribulation would come after the rapture.
So what do you think about, it says, don't hurt the oil and the wine?
Yeah.
That's an interesting, sort of thing to look at, because where does the oil come from?
Yeah, the plants,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
And where does the wine come from? Yeah, yeah,
Both, you know.
yeah,
So, I'm just curious as to why, you know,
Probably tradable commodities at the time, so
Mhm.
something to barter.
everything else is gone.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still barley, but it's
Mhm.
expensive. I mean, wheat is expensive, but
yeah,
anyway, it's just something to
yeah,
ponder.
yeah. I'm not exactly sure, you know, but if you look at it also too, as far as you know, just the anointing oil, maybe, I'm not sure if there's has something to do with it. Yeah, or you know, Jesus's blood as the wine.
So there's still.
Maybe
the,
some of the remnants.
The
yeah.
Last Supper,
Yeah, maybe it's talking about, you know, those that turn to Jesus, you know, during that time. I'm not sure. Those that are, you know, anointed and covered in the blood. I don't know for sure. I'd have to study that a lot more, but, you know, I was thinking about that too, though, just, you know, what exactly is the significance of don't harm the oil of the wine? Because, you know, one thing that we will be coming up on is God is going to seal his people too, you know, before the seventh seal is broken. So, you know, that's something in the next chapter that, you know, God will seal his people. So maybe that's talking about those that are sealed. But not entirely sure. It says, do not damage the oil and the wine. You know, it could be just people maybe really desired oil and wine in that time. I don't know. But yeah.
My commentary says that the oil and the wine are symbolic of luxuries.
Yeah.
The oil and the wine.
Mm.
So anything besides the necessity, the luxuries, and people will have that still.
Mm-hmm,
but very few.
yeah. Yeah, I'm sure there will still be
The
the elites that'll find their oil and wine.
I'm sure they've got their getaways, you know,
Yeah.
their doomsday getaways and,
Mhm. I mean, there's strategies even, you know, for, because some of the other judgments, you know, that are coming, when some of the other seals are broken in chapter 6, you know, it talks about people asking for the mountains to fall on them, you know, so it's something just, it's going to be a terrible time, you know, and even in America, we have contingencies, you know, for NORAD and, you know, other places where I believe even the Denver airport has a pretty large underground facilities. You know, there's several places, you know, where there's extensive underground contingencies, you know, just built in to mountains, you know, for world leaders to kind of run to if any type of nuclear attack or something were to happen. So, you know, there's possibly, you know, storehouses there for them, you know. But I'm sure people with connections will be able to get there too, you know.
They just prolong their death.
Mm-hmm,
They'll
yeah,
just live a little bit longer than everybody else, because once they come out, there's gonna be too much radiation.
mm-hmm, yeah,
Everything's gonna be dead.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's gonna be a terrible time, and, you know, God's gonna renovate the earth. You know, this is just gonna be a time for God to really, you know, deal with evil, you know, once and for all. It's kind of, you know, and even at least once, you know, because it will be, after the millennium, for a short time, there will be a little bit of evil released again, but it's not going to be, I think, as terrible as this time, because I think it's going to be short-lived, and God's just doing it again to weed out, you know, the righteous and the unrighteous. But if anything, though, this is going to be terrible times, you know, and it's something that, you know, other cultures talk about the end of the world. You know, it's something that, you know, other cultures, you know, they have this idea that it's all going to end, you know, and it's interesting. A lot of their messianic visions are, you know, someone coming out of the ground. You know, who lives in the ground right now? You know, Satan. If you want to take, because, you know, it talks about the grave, you know, being in the ground. So hell could be, you know, interpreted as being underground. I don't really think specifically there's like some subterranean element of our earth that is hell specifically. There could be, but I believe that it's a different realm, you know, outside of ours. But
another dimension perhaps.
another dimension, yeah. It's kind of how I interpret it.
The dimensional realm is real, but.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Well, where's the lake of fire?
Yeah.
It's in the core of the earth where all the molten lava is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at an abyss, I mean, or a bottomless pit, the center of the earth is bottomless. It doesn't just, you would keep falling, you know, so, I don't know. It's you know, the Bible talks about different angels that are trapped in the abyss, you know, right now, that will be released during this time too, so, you know, there's something interesting just about, you know, whether or not hell is in the earth or not, you know, I mean, because the Bible says that God cast Satan from heaven and he fell to earth, you know, so, you know, his kingdom is really in hell, but, you know, maybe there's a part of the earth that is hell. We're not really sure. You know, I don't think the Bible is explicit on it. I mean, when it talks about Sheol being the grave, I guess you could interpret that as, you know, hell and that being in the earth, you know, something that's dug in underground.
Yeah, there's a lot of things open for speculation and.
Yeah,
Well, thank God there's, you know, it's, none of that stuff is, you know.
matters.
You
Yeah,
don't need it for
yeah,
salvation,
exactly.
you know?
Yeah,
About it and say, well,
Yeah.
maybe this and maybe that.
yeah. Too many speculations can be
But
bad
it's
too.
not essential.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, our understanding of that's not essential to being alive in Christ. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Really good discussion, though. Yeah.
Are we gonna, I know we're gonna be raptured, you know, all the ones that are already accepted
Mm-hmm.
Jesus as their savior, you know, we're not gonna go through this, but
Mm-hmm.
is there gonna be, do you think there's gonna be a portion of that, the beginning of that we're gonna be? Because, you know,
I mean-
there's preachers that are saying to store up food, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Mormons, they're supposed to have like a year's worth of food stored, you know.
Yeah.
But I think when I say, you know, if we're gonna be raptured, why are they storing food?
Yeah.
Are they, and they're not saved or what? Or they don't believe the word of God or what?
I mean, like hard times can come to any period. I mean, there was the Great Depression, you know, that didn't spell the end, you know, but it was pretty bad. And, you know, some people had some provision, you know, and especially in the farmland, you know, people were able to survive because they had food, you know, but as far as, you know, storing up resources and stuff, I think if you live in an area prone to natural disasters, it's not a bad idea to have some provisions, you know, just in case a hurricane or a earthquake or something happens. But
Oh, we saw
Yeah.
a little bit of what happened when the COVID started, how
Yeah.
people were hoarding, you know,
Yeah.
food. So the ones that have the money to buy in large amounts to store, you know.
yeah,
They'll do that, but
Yeah.
then the people that don't have money, you know, they
Mhm.
won't get in. So I believe, you know, if they're not saved and they don't get raptured, the ones that have, you know, the ones that don't have are gonna go after them and kill them and get their
it can happen that way, yeah. I mean, 'cause we're talking about killing with a sword, so, you know, it's very possible and probable that, you know, there'll be targets, you know, people that are storing up stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's, you know, I see there's this one show, it's called Doomsday Preppers. You know, it was kind of funny, you know, because these people would spend their entire lives, you know, preparing for the end of the world, and they'd get a score at the end of the show, and the producers, you know, they would make calculations based on how much food and fresh water they had and stuff, and they say, yeah, we give you about 2 months to live after your doomsday scenario. It's like, you know, it's like they spend all this money and time, you know, it's preparing, and it's like, yeah, you get 2 extra months, you know, it's just delaying the inevitable. You know, I believe that there is God's provision, though, and I believe God will provide for his people, though, just as he did in the land of Goshen when, you know, Egypt was under the plagues, and God provided for the land of Goshen. So, you know, there will be his people, also Israel, that I believe, is going to deal with too, and I believe he wants to save the people of Israel, you know, because it says once they start attacking the people of Israel, that really is going to get God's attention, because they're like the pupil of God's eye, you know, the apple of his eye. So he's going to deal with people attacking Israel too. So it's, but I do believe. I believe we should trust in God's provision and not necessarily in how much stuff we can hoard, you know, because it's, I feel like, you know, if I can extend my life by a couple of weeks, you know, and then I die, what does it matter, you know, really? There's always the option of just, you know, surrendering and, you know, starving and going to heaven, you know, just, but it's, I think it's a little, you know, some of the pastors that I've heard that was selling, you know, stuff, they was like, oh yeah, you could buy it through our ministry, and it's like, is this a fundraiser, or, you know, what are you guys? You gotta, I don't want to mean to be cynical, but, you know, just you gotta wonder sometimes, you know, just the motivations of some people.
Well, I think it would probably make sense to have at least some essentials, because
Yeah,
you never know when there's gonna be a supply disruption.
yeah,
You know, California might fall into the ocean, I don't know what comes from California. But, you
Yeah.
know, it's like, well, maybe some food or something over there.
yeah,
It's like, oh my gosh, I guess I'm not gonna get any grapes.
yeah,
I'll buy some raisins.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel like, yeah, it's not bad to maybe have a, you know, a little bit of provision, you know, but it's, I mean, I think some people obsess over it. Some people get really, really intense about it, and, you know, I don't think they need to be that intense, you know, I think just having basic survival skills is important too. I mean, you know, like think about our ancestors, how they were able to live out here, you know, and just,
Look at toilet paper, you know.
yeah.
Remember that? It's like, you couldn't find any.
In prison, they give you a roll of wheat. God forbid you have diarrhea. Beating somebody else up for their roll, you know.
Got to barter for it, huh? Let's trade you some cigarettes for some rolls here.
Do for your roll. How did they get toilet paper though, when nobody
Right.
else had toilet paper?
Yeah.
It's a good time to be in prison.
There was a time when there was no toilet paper.
I
Mhm.
know, I'm saying that.
That was a
The
lot.
prisons had it.
So I wasn't worried about it.
And that's the thing, you know, somebody online said, you know, oh, the first thing you have to buy is toilet paper, and so everybody ran out and bought toilet paper, and then no one had any, you know, it's just,
Yeah, every time Mom would go out to a job, he'd come back at least with a 4-pack of toilet paper. I'm like, that's enough. I was giving that away.
But, you know, God is faithful, right? We weren't rushing out and get, you know,
yeah,
and we couldn't find any toilet paper,
uh-huh,
you know, in the stores.
yeah,
But what we had, without planning for it, you know,
Mhm.
just that we buy, big, you know,
yeah.
you have to keep on going, you know.
Yeah.
People are going crazy, you know.
God has a way of making things stretch on too.
Hey, I grew up in an outhouse and we had a lot of magazines and newspapers. Couldn't afford the toilet paper. That was a luxury. That's why you're tough, you know.
Probably don't have newspapers anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, print media is going away though. It's all online now. What do you do?
If they just cover it like the animals.
That's what they were.
Would they- Okay, I think we'll finish there, and we'll finish the next seals next week. All right, thank you for joining us online, and we'll say some prayer requests after this, but we'll sign out here.